give a couple minutes or a couple seconds to let people join. Okay. Hopefully people have joined, and we'll get started. I appreciate everybody's time, and I like to always get the meeting started on time. So first of all, welcome and thank you for being with us tonight for the candidate forum for the California Senate District 9 office. I am Deborah Cox of the League of Women Voters. I'd like to also acknowledge that tonight is also being sponsored by the Eden Area Chamber of Commerce. We're happy to have them join us. The League of Women Voters is a trusted membership organization that encourages informed and active participation in government. We do not endorse or oppose candidates or political parties. For decades, we have offered fair and balanced candidate forums. The League participates in advocacy and voter education. The advocacy area of the League may take positions on issues such as ballot measures. The forum is presented by the education arm of the League. I'd like to remind everyone that the candidates have all agreed to participate under the ground rules set for this forum. The League is very proud of their history of civil discourse and nonpartisan forums. This is an educational event, not a debate. Before we get started, there's some details to review that will help you interact with this session. Microphones are muted for everyone except the candidates and myself. Video images will show the candidates and myself as well. Candidates will stay on the screen for the entire forum and will mute until it is their turn to speak. Chat has been turned off for all attendees. We are recording this forum and we'll be posting it via our websites and social media, such as the YouTube channel, for the broader community to access. So there's one forum tonight for the position, as I mentioned, of California State Senate District number 9. There are 2 candidates running that you see before you, and they will each of them will have a chance to provide a 2-minute opening remarks. We will be handling questions for the candidates in the following manner. Questions for this forum have been solicited in advance from the committee and from our local leagues. We have screened the questions to ensure that they are fair and unbiased and to avoid duplication and anything inappropriate. The order of answering the questions will alternate, and each candidate will have 2 minutes to respond to each question. The chat function, again, will not be active. Okay, everybody can see there's a timer. Please keep an eye on the timekeeper screen. The clock will signal the candidates of the remaining time, and when the time is up, as a moderator, I may verbally give people a prompt as well. Remember that if you go over time, which I know it can always happen, I'll attempt to allow you to finish your sentence, but then we'll ask you to stop. If you violate the ground rules, you will be prevented from answering future questions, but I don't expect anything like that to happen tonight. There will be no separate rebuttals following the questions. Each candidate will have 2 minutes for a closing statement. So right now we will start. The candidates will make their opening statements. They've been randomly chosen. So at this time, and again, every answer is a 2-minute timer. At this time, I would like candidate Rubio to present her opening statement.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to join you tonight. Throughout my life, I have faced challenges with perseverance and resilience. I was inspired by my mother, a first-generation immigrant and single parent who earned her master's degree in education and taught in a high-need school district for over 30 years to advocate for my community. When I became a mother, my daughter was diagnosed with brain cancer. I became an advocate for my child when medical and educational systems were unresponsive to her needs. Because of my persistence, my daughter is now a long-term survivor and college student at UC Davis, double majoring in psychology and Spanish. Determined to provide my daughter with a better life, I earned a degree from the University of California, Berkeley in molecular cell biology with an emphasis in neurobiology. Using those lessons learned from my mother, the skills developed advocating for my daughter, and the empirical tools gained from my degree and career, I focused on improving my community and helping the most vulnerable in our society. I'm a staunch defender of women's reproductive and disability rights as a founding advisory board member for Fem Truth Youth, a nonprofit for women's reproductive health and education, and the Natalie Project, an advocacy fund for individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities. I'm also an executive board member for Sierra Club California and the San Francisco Bay chapter, where I was at the forefront of addressing climate change, and in this role, led several Bay Area environmental groups and the Contra Costa Building and Construction Trades Council in developing policy to help workers transition to green jobs. Currently, as a San Ramon City Council member, I brought about the first ever Climate Action Task Force to inform the city's climate action plan and to charter a sustainability advisory committee. I have successfully advocated for improved access to parks programs for seniors and people with disabilities, more workforce inclusionary affordable housing, and common sense gun laws. My campaign is focused on advocating, supporting working families, tackling environmental challenges, improving education, advancing racial and social justice, and making healthcare accessible and affordable. To learn more, you can go to www.marisolforca.com.
Okay, thank you. That was our first test. So we will thank you very much, candidate. Next, we'll hear from candidate Grayson.
Hello, my name is Tim Grayson, and I'm running for SD9. And I'm honored to be with you all tonight. My wife of 35 years, Tammy, and I share 2 adult children. We've lived in Concord for close to 3 decades. And as we were raising our kids, we saw the cost of living skyrocket, good paying jobs become harder to find, and the dream of becoming a homeowner move further out of reach. And that's nothing to say of healthcare and education being expensive and really often inaccessible. I'm concerned that one day I'm going to have to get on an airplane to go visit my grandchildren because my children could not afford to live where we raised them. Currently, I serve as assembly member to nearly half of Contra Costa County's residents. It's a role I've been in since 2016. I've been serving as an elected official in some capacity for over 14 years. I was first elected to Concord City Council in 2010. I served as council member, vice mayor, and mayor. And as mayor, I worked to balance Concord's $90 million budget, built up a 30% reserve, and gained invaluable experience in local governance. So I know just how important local control is. And around this time, I also co-founded the Contra Costa County Family Justice Center. It's a nonprofit that helps victims of interpersonal violence, including domestic violence, child abuse, elder abuse, and human trafficking. And in the Assembly, I've authored strongest in the nation laws to put to stop predatory lending, protect renters from unjust evictions and rent hikes, and help financially vulnerable Californians survive the pandemic. I've also worked to increase fines on refineries, and I was recognized as a clean air policy leader by Bay Area Quality Management District. I authored a bill which the governor signed into law, creating the Green Empowerment Zone, preserving livable wage jobs, addressing economic and environmental justice as we transition from fossil fuels to green and clean energy and manufacturing. In addition, I prioritize UC admissions for California students, reduced fees and disclosure fees for housing, streamlined affordable housing, mental health support for firefighters, and bringing back district $150 million.
Thank you very much. Now we will transition to our questions. And again, I will put the same question to both of you one at a time. We'll go back and forth. And since you last spoke, candidate Grayson, I'll address the first question to you, candidate Rubio. So question number 1. District 9 is a large and wide-ranging Senate district. How do you intend to gather and hear input from throughout Alameda and Contra Costa counties?
Great. Well, first and foremost, the wonderful thing is that I have actually been involved quite a bit up until now with throughout the East Bay, including all of the side of Senate District 9 that includes the Alameda side. That is why many of the community leaders there already know me. So I have actually been engaged with your community already, and why I received the endorsement of most of the city council members. One of them unfortunately had to retire, but most of them at the time, and there's a reason for that, because they've seen that I'm already engaged and interested in helping the community without even knowing whether this was going to be part of a district that I would be running for. So the other part is I've always, even as a council member now and a water district director and vice president before, I always stay engaged with my community. I do not forget who elected me and who I'm representing. And I'm always I show up. If I'm asked to show up, I want my community to know that I'm there for them day in, day out. And if I want to do my job well, I have to make myself accessible. And I know that I have to keep my ear to the ground. And so it's not about if I will do it, I will continue to do what I'm already doing as an elected official, and more. And I think that, we have to create opportunities to hear directly from the community, but also talk to community leaders, as mentioned, and different organizations and really just spaces within the community to make sure that we're actually representing everyone. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Candidate Grayson?
Yes, an example of keeping in touch with the entire district. When I was first elected in 2016, it was actually District 14, which included Benicia and Vallejo on the other side of a toll bridge. So the first thing that I did was downsize Contra Costa's office so that I could open up an office in Vallejo so that folks on that side of the water would not have to pay a toll to go visit their assembly member. So one way of keeping in touch is making sure that people have access to their elected official that they voted into office. I also have a track record since 2016. I'm now into my 8th year as assembly member, having a track record of hosting town halls throughout the district, not just in one area, but making sure that we cover from one side to the other, from top to bottom, and opening up opportunities for people to come in and engage, not to be lectured at, but to be listened to, and then discuss different issues. One of the beautiful things about the Vallejo office was it was shared with their congressman and with their state senator. Same thing with our town halls. It's not just Tim Grayson going in and being available to the people, but normally we partner up with multiple electeds, from a local elected to their assembly member to their senators. So I've hosted multiple town halls where people can come in and have actual access to multiple electeds that they've put into office that oversee the work from a local level all the way to a state level to even the federal level. So with that, I plan on continuing to do what I have a track record of, and that's engaging with the community.
Okay, thank you very much. Back to candidate Rubio. The next question is, we're hearing mixed messages from Sacramento concerning the condition of the state budget. Please share your perspective on the 2024 budget and your budget priorities.
Right. So first and foremost, obviously, there was a few things that led to that budget deficit. One of them being the businesses having an extended time to file, but also there were lower income tax revenues. And part of that, specifically for workers, it was 2% down. But as a whole, total income tax was down by 25%. And what that's telling me is that a few things have to happen on two different fronts. One, to close the gap, we have to look at where we have basically uncommitted reserves, and we can actually potentially pull back on it. There are also other opportunities, for example, from, BSA, Prop 2 funds, if there is a budget crisis declared by the governor that we can tap into that would provide about $25 billion. The other thing is that I think if we also look at cost shifting and other options, we can possibly lower it by another $10 billion. But nonetheless, at the end of the day, we have to think long-term and how we're going to address that. So I would raise wages, number one, because if you raise wages, you're going to have more spending, and when you have more spending, you have more sales taxes. Right now, the housing market is suffering because the Federal Reserve increased the interest rates, but also, those interest rates, our markets in California are especially sensitive to tech. Companies suffer dramatically. In the last 2 years alone, we've gone down 80% on tech companies and startups making investments here in California. And that's going to inevitably hurt us and the type of revenues that we're going to draw in. So we have to fix that all around to become more solvent and resilient during these periods of time. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, same question, candidate Grayson.
Thank you for the question. The deficit that we're facing primarily is coming from two different sources. It's the income tax, which was noted, but also the capital gains. For instance, an example, What California was used to was literally hundreds of IPOs going public. And in 1 year, we dropped down to only 4 IPOs. And the capital gains on that is not what's going to carry the 5th largest economy in the world. And when it comes to the income tax, that's the smallest percentage that's paying the most. So it's like building an entire economy, the 5th largest economy in the world, on the foundation of a toothpick. So it's a pyramid that's upside down. And that's why we have the volatility that we have in California when it comes to our taxes. However, having said that, we have taken measures in the past couple of years to make sure that we were prepared for a time like this. For instance, the past couple of years, we were very careful to make sure that we were not committing to ongoing cost, but that we were committing to one-time cost, so that if and when this day arrived, we would not put ourselves in a position where we've made commitments that we cannot keep. Now, it may be that in some cases we've had to defer and put those expenses out to maybe the next 2nd or 3rd or 4th year, but we will be able to keep the commitments. I do want to raise caution that the reserves are for a time of recession, and we have yet to reach that level to where we can say we're in a recession. We must be careful that we protect our reserves, and right now we must look at different ways, innovative ways, to become more efficient and more effective as a government, reducing the bureaucracy that costs taxpayers dollars.
Thank you again. This time I will start with you, candidate Grayson, on this next question. And this one is, at the last Eden Area Fall Festival, our league surveyed hundreds of attendings to determine their top priorities. Their top concern was the rising amount of homelessness in our communities. What do you see that you can provide to the Senate to address the needs of our community members who are unhoused?
This is a multi-legged stool, and it's not just one single issue. Housing across the state in all levels is at crisis level. This is a crisis that's been in the making for decades now. The reason why I say that is because we reduced our housing production exponentially for decades. And so we were never keeping up. For right now, just to make up in the next 10 years, just to break even, we would have to build 100,000 affordable housing units a year. We've never built 20,000. And so that is a task that is way, way far beyond what we were ever prepared for. I believe that we can make strides as we have done in the past couple of years. I've gone on a tour, 22 nights on the road, from San Diego to Chico, listening to regional groups that we brought together, because one size doesn't fit all. What works in San Francisco doesn't work in Fresno. What works in Redding doesn't work in LA and San Diego. So we've heard them. We've put together housing packages. We have Prop 1 that's on the ballot, ballot coming up March 5th, the primary ballot, which would provide the housing needed for the unhoused, but it would also provide the funding for the wraparound services. It's not just good enough to put a roof over their head and a door in front of their face and say, there you go. There is such a great need for wraparound services, mental health services, workforce training for our unhoused. And we have other ways that we can convert buildings to housing to be able to provide the services with the housing that is needed in each community. One thing to note, we need every community to step up and bear the burden for housing for those that are unhoused today.
Thank you very much. Okay, candidate Rubio, it was a long question. If you need me to repeat it, let me know.
My understanding is, how would I address the issue of homelessness,
Correct.
rising homelessness?
Yes.
Okay, so I would, first and foremost, we have to address what are the social determinants of those who become unhoused. Oftentimes, it's obviously wages being too low. The minimum wage needs to be a living wage. One full-time job should be sufficient to afford at minimum an apartment in California. The other component is life circumstances. Frankly, we know that there are many things that lead to mental health issues, for example, as was mentioned earlier, but for example, dealing with our youth early on, at-risk youth, making sure that in schools they're having access to programs and proper school psychologists are available to help them if they're to cope and thrive and be able to lead strong, fulfilling lives. The other part of it is also making sure that those who are already unhoused, when we talk about mental health services, we have to understand there's often trauma that they are contending with. Anyone who's living in an unhoused situation is dealing every day in a crisis mode. And it's very difficult to go, as a neurobiologist, I can tell you that there are fundamental changes to the way we actually operate, and at a very granular cellular level, that it makes it difficult, and they will need rehabilitative services, mental health care services, nutritional services, as well as job training services to help them reintegrate back into the workforce successfully and be able to thrive and live independently eventually. We have to put housing first at the forefront, create a safe space where people feel they can come regardless of what their current circumstances are, and, you know, create that opportunity of encounter between a healthcare provider and someone who is unhoused. And so I think this is really a public health issue and a mental health issue, and frankly, a socioeconomic inequity issue. And I feel I'm the best candidate for this.
Okay, thank you so much. Again, we're going to go back and forth. So the next question, we'll start with you, candidate Rubio. This question is, the second issue that came up during the Fall Festival was the challenge of affordable housing. What concrete steps can you and the Senate take to increase the amount of affordable housing in both counties?
So first and foremost, I think we have to make an investment in affordable housing. So I do think Prop 1 will be an important investment, but we also have to make sure that those funds that are raised are, you know, protected and dedicated and reserved for what it was intended for. Otherwise, when we have a budget deficit like the one we're having right now, they will dip into those things. And so we have to make sure they're protected, and dedicate that to help cities be able to meet their RHNA goals, but also to really ask of our developers to build more affordable housing per project. Right now, I can tell you, even in San Ramon, we had initially a project that was only going to produce 10% housing. I was fortunate enough that the developer agreed to my request for an additional single family home to be affordable. Which brought us up to 20%. But I'm hoping to go from between 20 and 25% on every development so that we can actually begin to close that gap. And we also have to, like I said, we have to help cities be able to afford and fund these initiatives. Some more cities are more solvent than others, and so we have to be ready to help them in those circumstances. The other thing is CEQA is an issue. I think, you know, CEQA is important. I very much care about the environment. I don't believe we should get rid of it. I certainly think we should look at ways that we can maybe streamline the process more to make sure we are still doing our environmental impact reports in our due diligence, but not holding up development. Also, PG&E plays a part in some of this delays as well. So we have to make sure they're staying on track, and that we are, so that there aren't delays on that front. And we have to continue to hold cities accountable and make sure that their housing element includes sufficient zoning for affordable housing. San Ramon was the first city in Contra Costa County to get approved. We never had to go back and revise it. So I will continue that good work going into the state Senate.
Okay, thank you again. Same question, candidate Grayson.
Thank you very much. And we in the Assembly and the Senate, the legislature, has done a lot in the past couple of years to address this housing issue. Of course, you know, Econ 101, supply and demand. So it's very, very important that we get back to a place where we're actually building up our supply again in the state of California. We have done things like reduce fees, run policy, that is, and create law to reduce fees, disclose fees. And in construction, as a general contractor, time can be actually worth more than money. And so we have streamlined, as I've said in every other forum from the very beginning, in addressing CEQA and how CEQA can be used in a way to help build more affordable housing. If we can create timelines within the CEQA process where we preserve taking care of our environment, but we also at the same time make it so that the affordable housing can get through. So with that, we have passed a lot. So in my conversations with the governor and his team, it was very clear that we have enough policy right now to get the housing. What we need is the enforcement. So I authored a bill for the governor, and he signed it into law to make sure that HCD had what it needed, housing community development on the state level, had what it needed to enforce our laws that we have passed to build up housing. The other thing that we're facing right now, especially with affordable housing, is the bureaucracy on the state level. Between we have 4 different ways that we can give tax credits, but they each have their own application, they have their own calendar and their own set of qualifications. By qualifying for one, you disqualify for another. By meeting the timeline of one, you lose the credit of another. So I have designed a way that we can bring it all together into one application, one calendar, and one set of qualifications to get rid of the bureaucracy.
Great. Well, thank you very much. I'll go back to you. We'll start with on the next question. So number 3 of the issues that came up was the worldwide issue about climate change. As state government leaders, how can you impact the effects of climate change throughout California?
Well, it's no secret that in this district, we have, one across the water, but we have the 5 oil refineries of Northern California, all within the area that we live and we breathe. I've been an outspoken, consistent defender of environmental protection and addressing climate change. I've proudly voted to increase civil penalties on refineries that release toxic pollutants into the air. I've supported a bill to achieve carbon neutrality by 2045. Many workers right here in our community depend on this critical energy job environment that we have. So I'm not going to ignore them at the same time. I do remain committed to protecting our environment, combating climate change. I supported SB X1 and 2, which allows for the California Energy Commission to investigate and potentially cap oil profits that are at our expense and the health of our people. I helped secure $100 million. As a matter of fact, I spearheaded that effort for $100 million for a fence line monitoring system for the refineries within our area. So with that, we will continue to work hard to transition from fossil fuels to green and clean energy. So much so that I authored AB 844, the creation of the Green Empowerment Zone, to make sure that we transition from that fossil fuel use and dependency to a green and clean energy environment and a manufacturing sector that would come alive to protect the jobs and also protect our health.
Thank you very much. Candidate Rubio.
Great question. I think first and foremost, one of the interesting things will be, for example, the bill that Senator Wahab is bringing up about increasing connectivity between our public transportation. You know, for example, I have often wanted to travel to San Jose, but the connectivity from BART to AC Transit is not great there. So we got to find ways to make it seamless and convenient for all Californians. And we also have to invest in infrastructure. Frankly, you know, there's rising sea levels. I know San Leandro is dealing with some of that. We also have to make sure that we know if we talk about actually meeting those goals, we have to invest in green infrastructure and green jobs. So we need to start getting our workers trained, start laying the foundation in their infrastructure so we can actually make those transitions, because without it, it's not happening. And that's why I've been leading at the forefront. Even before holding this seat, I am already leading on that forefront and laying the foundation and helping us transition. And it's that kind of vision that I will continue to bring forward to the state Senate. Also, I will identify, I think we need to identify local resources for water across California, look at some of the things like the treaties in the Colorado River for parts of Southern California, how that impacts them. Look at different sources to help find local solutions for resources if possible. As we know, the ecosystem in the Delta is very sensitive, and it's especially sensitive to drought years. And we never know when they're going to happen or how long they're going to last. We had a 3-year drought, almost expected to go on a 4th. We were fortunate enough that did not happen. And that has many impacts. not only to the local community, but to the environment, and also holding fossil fuel industries and polluters accountable. We really just need to say no more and really force in some way, incentivize them to make that transition. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much. Appreciate everybody's answers. So I'm going to go back to you or start with you again, candidate Rubio. Moving on, what steps do you see that the state Senate can take to support businesses and create employment opportunities in California?
So one of the things I've been pushing for, especially here in San Ramon, for example, is really trying to attract businesses that better align with the skill sets of our community here. And one of the reasons for that is, how many of us actually want to sit in traffic for as long as we've been sitting in California? We're tired of that. And so if we're serious also about greenhouse gas emissions and all of these other concerns, then we have to start bringing jobs that better align with the local community so they're not having to take on long commutes. It's also a quality of life issue. The other thing is we have to incentivize certain businesses. For example, also retail. Retail is another area where we can help to attract to that better align with our local communities. As far as jobs, we have to look at where the job trends are going. We know that many of the jobs are transitioning by definition. They're no longer the hands-on kind of work. And so we really do have to start to train our, educate and train our workforce for the next generation for what lies ahead inevitably, whether we want it or not. I think it's bound to happen, and it's going to be more information based and driven. So I think we just have to prepare the workforce for that, but also prepare lines of work for workers today who may find themselves in 10 years from now without work. And we have to make sure that we are protecting them, creating a seamless transition, and not potentially creating a problem where we have an even higher unemployment rate, which is another reason the budget deficit is what it is, because we also went from 3.8% to 4.8% unemployment rate. So that's about it. Thank you.
Great. Yes, thank you very much. Candidate Grayson?
Deborah, would you be so kind as to read?
I would be happy to. What steps do you see that the state Senate can take to support businesses and create employment opportunities in California?
Thank you for that question. First of all, it is imperative, vital, that we recognize there is a huge difference between a small business and a large business. And what works for a large business doesn't always work, or in many cases don't work for small businesses. Amazon can operate and absorb different costs that a mom and pop business downtown in our community just cannot absorb. And so the policies that we pass, we must take a constant consideration of exactly what is the impact. And so I'm supportive of some type of mechanism to where when we are impacting or when we are passing policy that impacts business, that there must be some type of a report. In other words, we've got to be attentive to what are the impacts of the policies that we're passing on the businesses that try to do business in California. We need to be attentive to their needs. And so we have to create an even playing field. There's people doing business and corporations as well as mom and pops doing business in California that have certain requirements and mandates put on them that their competitors in another state don't have. So they're already far behind in being able to compete on a global market. And so we've got to create an even playing field. And I'll give you an example. I've been working on this for several years, and it's AB 52, which is on this year. And that is making sure that our manufacturers can go and purchase a piece of equipment with some type of a tax credit that's equal to 46 other states in this country that don't tax the purchase of manufacturing equipment. And yet ours in California have to pay sometimes up to 10% extra. So I'm working to make sure that we can create that even playing field for those that choose to do business in our state.
Okay, thank you so much. Next question, let's go back to you, candidate Grayson. California has the highest poverty rate in the nation, and 1 out of 6 families is receiving some sort of government assistance. How do you see the Senate creating avenues for people to move out of poverty?
So this is multifaceted in the sense that one thing that has actually pushed us into poverty is how we have siloed all the things that impact a person's everyday life, whether it's healthcare or education, housing, transportation, or jobs and economy. They've all been siloed as though they all act independently of each other in a person's life. But I had to get in a vehicle to go buy my groceries or go visit the doctor, or visiting the doctor, because in my estimation, healthcare is housing. And so it is all gathered together. So for me, as a state and as a legislature, worked very hard at making sure we break down the silos. We consider the cost of living, as in my opening comments, how I'm concerned that one day I will have to go visit my grandchildren get on an airplane to go visit my grandchildren, because my children can't afford to live where my wife and I have raised them. And so by addressing cost, by also addressing incomes, by addressing how we create a prosperous environment so that people's dreams do not fizzle into a fantasy, but people's dreams can actually become reality. And that is by connecting jobs with health, with housing, with education, with transportation. And I believe when we break down the silos, we can find solutions to where affordability is the answer.
Thank you so much. Candidate Rubio?
So I always look at what's the source of primary sources of poverty. And we know oftentimes, as I mentioned, there's a component of it's a socioeconomic issue. And from the educational side, a higher education has to become more affordable and accessible. Frankly, many of our current older legislators got to go to college almost for free. We need to make that affordable especially for students who come from low-income households or are non-traditional students like myself when I was going to college. We need to stop penalizing students when they cannot go full-time because they have other family demands or personal that we have to work full-time. We need to work with them to make sure that they're able to obtain higher education without going into severe debt, and then saddling them for decades and essentially creating transgenerational poverty therein. We also have to strengthen rental protections and increase, as mentioned earlier, affordable housing. We have to raise, frankly, the living wage. As mentioned, part of the problem with the budget is the revenues on income tax returns. We need to raise those wages. It's long overdue, and at minimum, they should be at the living wage. The other thing is that we have to close gaps in social services. For example, many children who have disabilities like mine did, we don't have the same access to before and after school programs that other parents will have, which puts us at an exceptionally, us caregivers and parents, at high risk of being underemployed and not being able to advance in life in many ways. And also, we just, at the end of the day, have to also create other vocational training and options for people who maybe college isn't their first choice. And so I would absolutely support all of those initiatives and fight for that. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, the next question. Again, we'll start with you, Candidate Rubio. What are the important decisions before the California Senate in the next term, and what are your priorities?
So as has already been mentioned, obviously housing is going to be a critical issue. Mental health services is part of that, as we mentioned, because especially when we are dealing with housing insecurity or are already unhoused, we're dealing, oftentimes people are already contending with high stress issues that are putting them at risk for mental health issues. And there's, I think the other thing is continue to address as much as we can any issues with addiction, and to help those who are unhoused transition back into a stable sort of life and be able to thrive again. And I think that the other thing is education. Higher education is a big one for me. I think expanding before and after school programs so that our at-risk youth actually have a real opportunity to succeed in life despite what may be their circumstances at home. We have to really, as a community, wrap around our arms around our children, all of our children, regardless of what zip code they live in. And I think the other component that will be important, as I mentioned, was the infrastructure and the environment, and making sure that we are not only building green infrastructure and providing more green jobs, but also really holding polluters accountable. And, you know, we've had this talk for a long time with the fossil fuel industry that there's hydrogen fuel on the horizon for how many years? We need to get serious about it and transition them now. There's no time for delay. The global temperature just went up by 2 degrees Celsius, and that is concerning. You know, we are 2.7% is a crisis point. We're already more than halfway there. We need legislators who are climate champions, and I have already proven that in the last 4 years on the Sierra Club.
Okay, thank you so much. Back to you, candidate Grayson.
Thank you. I foresee the Senate in this next upcoming session, new session that will start. I foresee the Senate having to continue to face the issues of housing. The voices of California have spoken, and it is very clear that housing will continue to be a crisis issue for us until we can get the numbers that we need, whether it's affordable housing and especially on all levels. So that's one issue. The Senate's also going to face issues and conversations around energy and the dependability of energy. And the reason why I bring that is because we transition from one source to another. We have got to make sure that when we flip the switch, that the lights come on. And that right now we are transitioning to an electric sector of energy, but we're lacking in storage. I think another issue the Senate's going to face is public safety. We all know that a top issue in the news every time we turn on is retail theft or the burglaries or a discussion around what people have voted in the past in Prop 47. So that's going to be an issue. I also think health in the sense of mental health services being provided, as well as drugs like fentanyl and other things that are on our streets. Those are issues the Senate's going to have to face. My priorities continue to be housing as well, affordable housing, and what's called the missing middle. That's our workforce housing for our teachers and for our first responders who live in the community. They should not have to drive over an hour to go work in a community, but they can't live there because they can't afford it. The environment remains very important to me. I think it's a false choice between economic justice and environmental justice. You can achieve both at the same time. The really exciting thing is the coming on of AI, but I think we need to foster innovation without losing and compromising consumer protection.
Okay, thank you very much. On to the next question, and we'll start with you, candidate Grayson. This question is, how will you ensure your policies reflect the diverse values of our communities?
I think I would go back to the very beginning when we talked, and it was about how would you be able to cover the entire district. It is a diverse district, and but I'm used to that. Yeah, I'm used to a diverse district. When I was representing a part of my district was North Walnut Creek and Clayton, and another part of my district was Vallejo and Antioch. And so with that, I believe that it really takes a member that is engaged, not just someone that goes up to Sacramento and stays there, but someone that stays in the district and is engaged in the district as often as can be, whether it's hosting town halls, whether it's attending events from a chamber event to a park event, being engaged with the community on different sessions or different topics. And whether it's sending out a survey and getting feedback that way, but especially always having an open door policy and always having ears that are tuned and ready to listen. And something that I believe I have been able to accomplish both from the capital side to the district side. and that is being a member with a reputation of being accessible. So when you make a phone call, when you do an email, when you even come to visit, you can plan on seeing the member. And that's how I operate, especially when it comes to constituents needing access to their elected. I've been there for them.
Thank you very much. So back to you, candidate Rubio, same question.
Well, going back to what I said earlier on, public policy shows that the best policy is informed by the community. I embody very many of the communities that are often marginalized. I am a daughter of an immigrant mother to this country, a single parent, myself and my mother as well. I'm a woman of color and have faced many challenges therein because of that. I'm somebody who identifies with the LGBTQIA+ community. I'm a mother of a brain cancer survivor with lifelong disabilities. And I also have a science and public health background. And I think that those experiences brought together really put me in a unique and distinct position where I can truly represent the most marginalized within our community. But I also will always remain humble, and I understand inherently that I have to continue to keep my ear to the ground, continue to listen to other families who are going through the challenges that I have gone through for now almost 3 decades, and try to understand what are the new challenges they're facing today and how we can meet those successfully. And I think that, really understanding from both like, as I mentioned, from a health perspective, how the intersectionality of racism, our zip codes, why there's higher comorbidity rates in certain zip codes, why when you live closer to a refinery, for example, why life expectations are shorter, why caregivers often who are in high need, caring for a high need person die as early as 10 years or earlier than the person they care for. I understand all those things. This isn't just about, racial and social justice. This is about human rights, and I will bring that voice to Sacramento.
Thank you so much. Okay, we're getting near to the end of our hour, so but a couple more questions left. So we'll start again with you, candidate Rubio. What measures would you take to foster unity in our currently politically divided environment?
Well, first and foremost, serving in San Ramon is not exactly it's not a it's a very mixed bag, a very purple city. We have many Republicans, independents, and Democrats. And I have learned serving here, both through the water district, because I was serving San Ramon in the water district, but I'm also serving now as a city council member to work with everybody. And I think at the end of the day, we also have to have a level of respect for our differences of opinion, but also learn to understand, to listen better and try to learn from each other, because I think there are oftentimes valid points to people's different points of views. The best decision is somewhere in the middle when we talk and with open discourse and respect, mutual respect, and are able to actually come to the best determination. And I think education is the most important thing. I know when I've had to really push through some things like the climate task force in San Ramon, the first one we've ever had, pushing through the gun ordinance to make sure that there's safe storage for guns in San Ramon. I had to do my homework. You have to show up with the data. Every decision I make is based on, because of that science background, I default to data. I mean, I listen to opinions, but at the end of the day, I'm going to look for the metrics because I want to make the best decision for my community. And so I think that, just having common respect, understanding, sticking to the facts, not attacking people personally is a very important way, but also educating the public. There have been incidents of racial discrimination within the community. We have to educate our students. We have to educate the community and create community opportunities to come together and be in proximal spaces to talk about these issues. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Same question, candidate Grayson.
Divisions come because we have our camps. We have our little fiefdoms. We have silos, and we climb into them, and we allow that to identify us. We allow that to determine what values are, when really consensus is bringing people together, stakeholders of an issue or a subject matter, bringing them to where we can share and we can learn about each other. And when we do, we find places where we can agree and let that become the starting point. This is something that is so important. I'm very passionate about it, and been able to develop a reputation of being a consensus builder, because solutions, real solutions that help voters or that help constituents or help the community, come when the parties of an issue or an idea come together, put aside their labels, put aside their stereotypes, and actually work on what is the root of the issue. And so with that, through engagement, through education, through listening, through learning, we can actually come up with solutions that get us over the top, get us past the threshold, into a place where we can all work together, live together in a better harmonized environment. So with that, it's really about not letting people just go different directions and shrugging their shoulders and saying, "Que sera, sera," but really it's about working very hard to be that center point where all the spokes come together and provide the information, provide the education, and the knowledge that we need to be able to work together.
Okay, thank you so much again. All right, well, and we're down to our final question, but one that's very important to the League of Women Voters. So I'll start again with you, candidate Grayson, and the question is, where do you stand on independent redistricting for California, and why?
I think anything that has to do with how the electorate is put together, how people vote, and how we come together to create lines of what I'll just describe it as equity, lines of equity, not just equality, and lines of justice. And so with that, I am very, very supportive of being able to have a neutral or a nonpartisan group that comes in, that is able to be watched and oversight is provided, but for them to be able to create the best environment possible for the greatest amount of equity to exist.
Great, thank you very much. And finally, candidate Rubio.
Yes, so I would say I agree. I think we need to absolutely support independent oversight committees that would manage the redistricting in California. I think that and neutrality certainly is important, but I think equity, talking about really making sure that we are having not that inadvertently diluting the vote of certain communities of color in the process, which has happened oftentimes in certain areas. And I think we just, we really have to also create space for the community. I know they provide some feedback, but the everyday person is not aware that they even have an opportunity to weigh in on these issues. And so I think we need to do a better job of educating the community and creating access to the general public to weigh in on what they would like to see be more, they feel is more representative of their community, and how their leaders can better represent them. So I think bringing the community into the fold is an important factor there, and in addition to this independent committee that would manage this part. And I think just at the end of the day, also making sure that resources are equitably distributed, whether that's hospitals, access to transportation, all those types of things, just to make sure that there aren't imbalances that would make it very difficult and disproportionately underrepresent any particular community or interest therein.
Great. Well, again, thank you to both of our candidates. We've covered a lot of different topics, and I'm sure everyone has appreciated hearing your views on all the different things. So we are at the point now where we'll have your closing statements. Again, there'll be 2 minutes, and we'll go ahead. We'll start with candidate Grayson.
Thank you. California deserves a bright future, and I really want to use my experience to help make that a reality. Housing remains a top priority, which is why I went statewide hosting regional workshops, knowing that one size doesn't fit all. The environment and climate change remain top priority, which is why I've been an outspoken and consistent defender of the environment, whether it's civil penalties on refineries or achieving carbon neutrality by 2045, securing $100 million for the fence line monitoring. Jobs and economy are top priorities, which is, as mentioned, I created the Green Empowerment Zone so that we could have a strategic plan in place to protect jobs and build up our economy as we transition to green and clean energy and manufacturing. Public safety is top priority for the mere sake that people expect their children to be safe at schools and in parks. They should be able to shop without fear, and we should all be able to leave our homes with the certainty that we're going to return home safely. And running for the Senate is vitally important to me because I'm hoping that I can continue the work I've done in the Assembly, finding pathways to grow our economy, create new jobs, support workers, lead efforts to build more affordable housing faster while protecting renters, and always fighting to make our community better for all who live here. One of my top priorities is preserving the rights of all, whether it's the right to access reproductive health or LGBTQ youth, the right to be able to attend school safely without the threat of adverse actions taken against them. That's why I've been endorsed by Planned Parenthood and Equality California, as well as the Bay Area News Group, that's Mercury News and East Bay Times, California Labor Fed, the California State Building Trades and the locals, the California Professional Firefighters and the locals, the California Federation of Teachers, and the state local leaders like Assembly Speaker Robert Rivas, or Assembly Members Bauer Kayan, Bonta, Lowe, Wicks, Senator Glazer, Controller Malia Cohen, or Treasurer Fiona Ma. I am honored to be here with you all tonight. I hope I've been able to earn your vote, and thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you so much. Okay, finally, candidate Rubio.
Great, thank you. My campaign for state senate is focused on supporting working families, tackling environmental challenges, protecting reproductive freedom, upholding common sense gun laws, advancing racial and social justice, addressing our housing crisis in collaboration with our cities, improving public safety by creating oversight committees, expanding psychosocial services for our police departments, identifying the social determinants of crime and poverty, and making sure that we help low-resource communities thrive. Equity begins by making sure that pre-K through college and healthcare are more accessible, affordable, and timely for all. That is why I'm endorsed by the largest teachers association, the California Teachers Association, San Lorenzo and Hayward Education Association, California Faculty Association, the California Service Employees Association, the National Union of Healthcare Workers, Healthcare for All California, the American Federation of State, County, Municipal Employees, Council 57. Another component of equity at the core is environmental justice. As mentioned, I've not only served in the Sierra Club, but also for elected officials to protect America on the National and State Council. And you know, and that is why it's not just serving in those capacities, but actually being a leader on climate change, having piloted a program that is now being adopted at a county level to help our workers transition to clean, renewable jobs. That's why I'm endorsed by the Jane Fonda Climate Action PAC, the Center for Biological Diversity, and also by the California Environmental Voters, Sustainable Rossmore, and many, many more. As the only I am also, I think we need to be better allies to our community, to our youth, to our environment, to women, to LGBTQIA community, to immigrants, to communities of color, and to people with disabilities by supporting candidates who, like myself, have proven themselves to uphold our community's values. Surprisingly, I am the only Latino or Latina elected in all of Supervisorial District 2 and 4 in Contra Costa County. We need to do better. What's at stake here is everything Californians believe in. Thank you and I hope to earn your vote. Sorry.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Well, I want to personally thank both of the candidates. So happy that you're here, and that concludes the questions and your speaking part. So I just want to make sure that we let everybody know that some of you may have not had your questions addressed, but the screeners combined similar questions of general interest to the audience in the limited time we had. We hope that you will contact the candidates directly for additional information. Your local leagues also participate in Vote 411, an online collection of candidates' information. We encourage you to view the candidates' information there. If you have moved or changed your name or wish to change your party affiliation since you last registered, you need to re-register. Online voter registration is available at the Secretary of State's website, which is sos.ca.gov. It's secure and easy. The deadline to register to vote online is February 20th, 2024. Voters may also register to vote on Election Day and vote provisionally. Ballots were mailed out on the 5th of February. You can vote in person, by mail, or place your ballot in an official Alameda County ballot drop box. Whatever you choose, please remember to cast your ballot on or before Election Day, March 5th, 2024. Again, thank you to the candidates for participating this evening. Thank you for taking the time to become an educated voter. We also had many volunteers participating, and I want to thank them for their help. We welcome any of you to join the League of Women Voters in doing the hands-on work to empower voters and defend democracy. Please vote March 5th. Thank you very much. That's it for tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.